I envy him, but I'm in lousy shape, so he would never take me on one of his journeys as it is. I've asked. And been rebuffed. No, that's not true. But anyway.
No, you're not being rebuffed, man. I've said to you, you know about the fitness. If you can do it, Tim, you're there. No problem. It's all on you. Always has been. The offer's there.
You're going to live to regret that one of these days.
Ladies and gentlemen, beloved of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Banal of America Audio, with your host, Tim Banal.
What is going on, my friends? This is Tim Banal of banalofamerica.com with another edition of BoA Audio Season 6. Very excited about this installment of the program because we're welcoming back my good buddy, Extreme Explorer Extraordinaire, Adam Davies. And I feel like it dovetails perfectly with the last edition of the program, which was, of course, our 2010 year in review for the world of ufology, as well as a look at cryptozoology and the paranormal in general. And one of the big themes that seemed to emerge from that episode was this frustration over the lack of tangible evidence to just about any paranormal mystery across the board. Well, we have a great sort of retort, in a sense, to that point, and it comes this week, of course, from our guest, Adam Davies. He is a world-class cryptozoologist, my friends. He is, in my opinion, one of the very, very best researchers in all of esoterica. And I know that's a bold statement, but why I say that is because Adam Davies puts boots to the ground and actually goes to amazing locations all over the world to find information on all these different mysterious cryptids. He's got guts in abundance, my friends. These are seriously terrifying and arduous locations to explore. He's gone to the Himalayas in search of the Yeti. He's traveled to, of course, Sumatra many times to look for the Orang Pendek. He's had research expeditions in search of Norway's Nessie, the Almas of Russia, and, of course, the infamous Mongolian death worm. So this guy is a serious world traveler, and his expeditions consistently produce some remarkable data on all these different creatures. He's doing yeoman's work, my friends. He's doing potential breakthrough work year in and year out. Now, let's get down to business on what we're going to be talking about here this year on Adam's appearance on BoA Audio, because it's very, very exciting. In the last year, Adam traveled to India in search of the mysterious creature known as the Mandi Burung. And the best way to describe the Mandi Burung, for lack of a better term, is essentially India's Bigfoot, but who knows really what this creature is. Adam will take us up close and personal on his journey to India. We'll hear how it came about, what the conditions were like during the expedition, some stories about the adventure. He'll tell us what the eyewitnesses in the area say the Mandi Burung looks like and its behavior. This is seriously compelling stuff, folks. And Adam will tell us about the evidence for the creature that he and his team collected during the trip. But that's not all, my friends, because then we're going to get into really what has become Adam's white whale, and that is, of course, the Sumatran Orang Pendek. He'll tell us about some extremely promising new DNA findings that have come out in the past few months with regards to the Orang Pendek, thanks to Adam's expeditions to Sumatra. And from there, we'll find out what he sees as the best way to take the investigation to the next level in 2011 and beyond. Adam is, as I said, hot on the trail of the Orang Pendek. He's the closest of anyone we know to actually proving the existence of this creature. So we're going to get a very, very timely update on what the situation is with regards to this mysterious creature of Sumatra. As you kind of heard from the introduction, and if you've heard the program before with Adam Davies, you know there's going to be a lot of laughs in this conversation, and of course there's going to be a lot of really fresh and fascinating information here from Adam Davies. You're going to hear some really groundbreaking stuff, some really rare stuff. Not too many people have gone in search of the Mandy Barung. Not too many people even know what it is or have much less investigated it. Adam has walked the trails of the Mandy Barung, and he's going to tell us all about it here. He is a hardcore cryptozoologist. He travels to the ends of the earth, stalking the world's most mysterious creatures. You've waited long enough, folks. Adam Davies is back at his paranormal audio base camp to give us an update on all of his adventures from 2010 and tease some very cool stuff for 2011. For those of you unfamiliar with Adam Davies, allow me to provide you with a little background on him. Adam Davies has tracked so-called mystery creatures all over the globe. His adventures include being shot at in the Congo whilst looking for the Mokele Mamembe Congo dinosaur, and being arrested by the Mongolian army as a spy whilst hunting the fabled death worm of Mongolia. Adam sincerely believes that some but not all of these fabled creatures exist, and embarks on field research in order to substantiate this. He's also had some fantastic successes, with scientists confirming his finds as remarkable and astonishing, in the case of both the Sumatran orang pendek and Norway's Nessie. Remarkably, to date, Adam's expeditions have been entirely self-funded. He has been featured and or presented on some very enjoyable documentaries, including Russian Bigfoot on the National Geographic Channel, as well as The Real Hobbit and China's Wild Man on the History Channel's Monster Quest series. Adam would love to pursue his passion full-time, but at present works as a civil servant in Manchester, UK. His website is www.extreme-expeditions.com. Check it out. And if you want to find out more about Adam Davies and his adventures, you definitely want to pick up his book, Extreme Expeditions from Anomalous Books. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and my friends at Anomalous Books tell me that you can now get Extreme Expeditions as an ebook for your Kindle, Nook, or iPad. And on that note, I've jibber-jabbered enough, folks. Let's get down to business and rock and roll. This interview was recorded on December 21st, 2010. Adam Davies tells us about his journey to India in search of the Mandy Barung and provides an update on Sumatra's orang pendek on BoA Audio Season 6.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of BoA Audio Season 6. We're welcoming back somebody who has really become a great friend of the program. Seems like every year around this time now, this is the third year we've done it, sort of building itself into a tradition. We welcome back Adam Davies to the program to talk about his extreme expeditions of the past year. And this year he's got quite an interesting journey that he went on. We're going to delve all into it. If you don't know who Adam Davies is, you already heard the prepared bio at the beginning of the show, but let me put him over here once again. Obviously, he's the author of Extreme Expeditions, the book, and he puts his money where his mouth is as far as this cryptozoology stuff goes. He travels all over the world in terrifying and arduous conditions and has a great time doing it and picks up some amazing evidence. He's really closer and closer to nabbing the orang pendek, or proving its existence at least, and he's spent considerable amount of time in the Himalayas. I mean, he's a world traveler and a daredevil, really, and it's kind of rare in the world of esoterica because a lot of people do their research, by talking to witnesses of UFO sightings or something like that, or reading from the computer or something. So it's like he really gets out there and does it. So, I envy him, but I'm in lousy shape, so he would never take me on one of his journeys as it is. I've asked and been rebuffed. No, that's not true. But anyway.
No, you're not being rebuffed, man. I've said to you, you know about the fitness. If you can do it, Tim, you're there. No problem.
I know. It's all on me.
It's all on you. Always has been. The offer's there.
You're going to live to regret that one of these days.
No, I won't. We'll have a blast. Promise you.
Anyway, well, obviously you just heard from him. Adam Davies, welcome back to the show. I'm starting to think of this program as sort of like your base camp of paranormal audio. You're back here to talk about what's been going on.
Yeah, I always have a blast doing this show. It's great, and it's really good to talk to you again, Tim. I'm looking forward to today's show.
Yeah, it's going to be great to catch up, and obviously it's going to sound out of context, but happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We're only a few days away from the holidays, so I hope yours is awesome.
Yeah, and you. You have a great time.
So, aside from the big expedition, let's start, I guess, just, sort of obscure that part. We'll get into that in a moment. How was the year otherwise for you? How'd everything go since the last time we talked to you?
It went well. I mean, last time we talked, I was talking about what I might do in the future, and then pretty soon after that, I started to plan things and make some progress. And I'm pleased that as I look back on the year, there's been 2 really potential fantastic achievements, which I'll talk about, and 1 really, really great expedition. So I'd consider this last year to be a real success. So I'm very pleased with how it's gone.
Yeah, I was impressed. I was following you along over the year, and then looked back at what you'd done, and it was like, wow, this, another fantastic year for Adam Davies, another, remarkable year. Now, the big expedition this year was a late October trip to India to find and you're going to stump me again here with the name of this creature.
Shall I say it first?
Yeah.
No, it's called the Mandi Barung, yeah?
Okay, the Mandi Barung.
Mandi Barung in India.
Exactly. So I guess, first of all, what is the Mandi Barung? And second, what plant? Because I've never even heard of this thing. So, I mean, kudos to you for even knowing about this. And what planted the seed for you to go after this? Because, you cut your teeth really made significant progress on the Orang Pendek. And we talked last year, you saying, you're kind of thinking about, moving away a little bit from that. But obviously you were in the Himalayas last year, so you get a completely different sort of direction with this one. So how did it all spring to mind, I guess you could say, and tell us about the creature, obviously?
Yeah, I will. I mean, the first thing I'll say is let's come back to the Orang Pendek, because there's been some really significant news on that. But we'll talk about that.
We'll definitely, I still have a lot of questions about the mischievous little beast.
Well, the way it happened with the Mandi Barung was, I was in, if you can recall, I was in, last year I was in Nepal. I was in the Himalayas with a monster craft. We were looking for the abominable snowman. That was the episode. And while I was there, I was with a chap called Ian Redmond, who's the UN ambassador for gorillas. He's an OBE, he's a British guy. And I was with a mountaineer called Yagihara, a Japanese gentleman. Now, while I was with Ian, we were talking about other things, and one of the nights around the campfire, when I'd come down from that horrendous mountain, I rendezvoused with Ian, and we were having a drink, and I was telling him my tales about how we nearly died, etc., on top of the mountain.
I remember that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you remember, the rocks and the boulders, and we were jumping over them, and the avalanche nearly killed us, etc. So I was telling him my tales, and we got talking about other things, and Ian said that he'd been in touch with an Indian researcher called Dipu Marek, and that there were stories coming out of India about a creature called the Mandi Barung. Now, the stories were that there was... The stories go back centuries, essentially, which interested me. And I'd heard very little about it, but not very much. I mean, you're completely right in saying there isn't a lot of research. And he said to me, this is something you should really check out and go see. For yourself. I'd originally advised Doug Hijack, who's the producer of Monster Quest, to do a short recce on it himself, and he did. But then I decided to plan a really in-depth expedition to really go for as long as I possibly could. Because Ian inspired me to go. He said, this is something I think, in my capacity as an expert, is something that's worth checking out. And when I started to research it, it became apparent. I like the idea it had gone back centuries, Tim. I like the idea, we weren't talking about plastic Yetis in the last 5 years,
Right, exactly, right.
Yeah, there wasn't some crap about a tourist trade thing. This was something that the people really believed in. And I got in contact with Dipu Marek in early March. Beginning of March is when I got into contact with him. And I said, I want to bring a team together to India. I want to look at this. And then we started the in-detail planning. So it started in March based on the idea I picked up from Ian Redmond the year before.
Yeah, I was impressed by that as I was following along and reading and recalling that. Yeah, I mean, how long is that? Like 9 months almost of planning. So. Yeah,
it's 9 months. When you're planning an expedition when there's been very little background research, so very few people have gone, you pretty much got to start from scratch. So I literally got on my computer and thought, right, well, how the hell do I begin doing this? Here I am starting again. I've planned things from scratch before, but there was such a lack of information. It was extremely difficult. There was one website that Dipu had put up with a few things on it, but that was it. And with these things, as you said, it's my time and my money, and also the people I'm with. I'm responsible for their lives. I lead the expedition, so it's not only my time and my money. I've also got to consider the safety of the people who are out there. And at the time, there were some pretty hairy stories about terrorist activity out there as well.
Oh, boy.
There was some really quite active insurgent groups, and we saw a burnt-out truck on the way out as we got in there, and before we went, somebody had been kidnapped, and there were 2 bomb explosions. So,
oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it was weighing it all up before we went. It was like touch and go, and Dippy was. We did loads of planning. As you know, it was the logistics, the organisation, the terrain, getting the camera traps. Everything had to be in place. But right up to the wire, I was making a decision on whether we should go based on the situation. And I had a big powwow with the guys on the team, the guys, people, like Richard and Chris and Dave from the CFZ. I was saying to them, is this something that we really want to do? But we were all committed by that stage.
Yeah.
We were in, and so it was time to bite the bullet and go. So it took a lot of time, a lot of preparation, but there was also a really, really heavy assessment of potential risk. I felt about the risk more than I'd felt since the Congo that we were taking on something there.
Yeah. Sounds troubling. Jesus, wow. See,
it was intense. It was intense. As I wandered through Tura town, Dippy said, well, a bomb went off here, and it was like in the bakery, and not to be flippant, but I was thinking, well, the bakery is the best place for food, man. It could have bombed somewhere else, But that's like gallows humour, you know what I mean? Because you're thinking, well, there's something going to kick off here. I mean, fortunately, it didn't. We were very well cared for, and the local people were brilliant. But I mean, I'll give you an example. When we wandered into the jungle where Not Correct National Park is, when we went off this thing, the headman of the village said, well, where are they going? And I said, well, we're going to yon jungle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where do you think we're going, man? We're passing your village and we're going out to the jungle. He said, well, be careful how far you go, because there could be the terrorist group it could well be down there,
Yeah.
So we had to weigh it all up. And I never felt, I can't say that I never felt in any danger, but I did before I went, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's try and take people into this thing. Well, obviously, we talked last year about the Himalayas, how it was sort of hot at the bottom and it got colder and stuff. And obviously, when you're looking for the Orang Pendek in Sumatra, it's pretty, it's in sort of a rainforesty jungle conditions, if I recall correctly. So what was the, what was the makeup of this expedition as far as that goes? And what kind of terrain and environment were we having to, deal with?
It was hilly mountain jungle. I mean, again, I'd planned it carefully because doing your research is important to go at the right time. And initially, I'd wanted to go as soon as I could possibly get it together. So I was initially speculating about going in sort of June and around there. But Dipu basically said, well, if you go then, the whole place is going to be flooded. And I saw evidence of that when I went to this amazing place called Balpakram, which I've got to tell you about. But ask me about it in a second, because it's an awesome place, Tim. You saw there was no substantive roads. There was nothing there. We had these 4-wheel drives, and one of them was knackered and broke down as soon as we tried to get out of places. So the earliest time I could go there was in the dry season, which, as you rightly say, is the end of October, beginning of November. So I took my first pitch I could get to get out there, because I wanted, one of the things about expeditions, I wanted to be out there as quick as I can, and to be probably the first people to do substantive research. That was important for me then, because I put all that time and effort in, and I wanted to get out there as quick as I could and see as much as I could. So November had to be the time.
Yeah, because I'm sure, the more you think about it and stuff, it's you just can't wait to get out there, pretty much.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're there, when you the excitement's building up, and you're getting nearer and nearer to the time. Lots of things are happening. You've got the logistics. You've paid out the money, You've got your equipment. You're reading all these bulletins. Dippy's sending me these things. Oh, I'm really sorry, but X, Y, and Z has blown up. Do you still want to come? And I'm thinking, yeah. By that stage, by the time it got to then, obviously I consider my team, and we consider the risks, and we all talk about it. But by then, I sent him a mail just before I left, and I said, I don't care what's going on, we're coming, man.
Nice, yeah, absolutely. And sort of also to throw back to that anticipation thing, plus, it's a pretty fresh sort of case in a way. It's a pretty fresh creature, I guess you could say. Like you said, there's barely any information out there on it, so to be down there and really providing so much info for data gathering, I guess you could say, expedition is remarkable.
That's right. I mean, I think one of the things that really struck me when I went out there, I mean, I'll mention Balpakram now because it gives you the sort of context of what I'm talking about. We interviewed a number of people, eyewitnesses, forest rangers, etc. But one of the things that I noticed when I went to ask for, because I had to ask for special permission to go to some of the places, and that meant liaising with government officials from India, who were very helpful. I haven't got a bad word to say about anybody who helped us. They were all fantastic. But I noticed on the surveys that it said, well, based on 30% of creatures surveyed, so it talked about, I don't know, what creatures were native to the area, so say a red panda, and it gave a list of species. And so I said to one of the forest rangers, why only 30%? He said, well, that's all we've surveyed because that's the resources we have.
Wow.
And when I went to this place called Balpakram, and this amazing valley, and the local people, the Garo tribes, believe that's the sort of key word, the key area to paradise, and it's intensely beautiful. It's like this amazing canyon, 15 kilometers across, which is wedged with beautiful jungle on a cliff face. It's awesome to see. I can't emphasize to you enough. If you get an opportunity, go, Tim. When you've done that jogging with me, well, I'll take you. but I mean, I stood on the edge of that, and I said to Rudy, who's my forest guide there, I said, well, what's down there? And he said, well, we don't really know. We've got an idea, a few hunters have been down there, but on the edge of it, but there's no reason for people to go, so we actually don't know a lot about it. And you just think, well, man, I'm here, I'm here, and I'm in one of these places in the world which is not really that well explored or not really that well surveyed. So when people sit at home thinking, well, all these places must be well covered and well combed, well, I can tell you that a couple of months, 5 weeks ago, I was in an area which isn't that well surveyed, where people don't really know what's down there, which is incredibly beautiful, untraversed jungle packed full of species. I've seen it, man. They're still there.
Amazing. Yeah, it's remarkable to wrap your mind around that. We had John Cassar on. We were talking about areas in the Siberian realm that sort of have that attribute too. So it's remarkable to think about these pockets, and that you're going there, and that and that you're actually going there and setting foot into these places is remarkable. So obviously you're on the hunt of the Mandi Barung. Is that close?
No, that's it. That's
nice. Wow.
You picked it up.
So you're on the hunt for the Mandi Barung. I guess I was impressed by, and I feel like we're going to sort of go wildly, chronologically all over the place here in this conversation.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's fine.
That's what we do when we chat. And
yeah, exactly. This is, just imagine me and Adam with a beer and a little table. That's about.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly how it is.
The extent of the conversation. So what I was impressed when I looked, when I was reading your journal, at just how rich the evidence was that was there. You know what I mean? It's like almost like this stuff was waiting for someone to come and investigate, because you guys said you had 2 footprint sightings, and it sounded like the one that you had was fairly fresh. Like, you saw some crabs around and looked like a rock had been thrown. So, I mean, this thing could have been there like 5 minutes ago.
I was really impressed by the evidence. I mean, even one of the things I was seriously worried about before I went was that I was concerned that there hadn't been a huge amount of eyewitness sightings recently. And when, unlike the Orang Pendek, which the sightings, I think it's fair to say, are fairly common, and that was one of the things I was investigating. And what I didn't want to happen was what happened to me when, or I hoped wouldn't happen, was when I went to Mongolia and I looked for the Almas, when I became convinced, if you recall, that they were on the edge, if not past the point of extinction. It's really all over for those in those mountains. And I didn't want that to happen here, but I had real reservations. And Dipu had said, I said to him, well, what do you estimate the population to be? And he said, well, maybe it's only about 10.
Oh, wow.
But, and I thought, well, it's all over for here too, that was before I went. But having been there, I'm much more convinced that the population of these creatures, and I'll talk about what I think there may be later if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But in answer to your specific question, we found quite a lot of evidence. I mean, I interviewed some of the eyewitnesses, and I gave them a real grilling. And again, I'll describe the creature, but. Yeah, there was one particular incident, again, at Nokrak, near where we set up the camera traps, and it was quite good, actually, because it was filmed as it happened, so it wasn't like, we come back later and this is what I found. It was filmed there and then at the time. And the BBC, I hope they decide to use it. I don't have editorial control, but I thought it made a really good sequence, because we were going up to take the camera traps down at the end of our expedition, and I found what looked to be Mandy Barung prints. Now, you can't be certain. It was difficult because they were in a very shallow river system. But I said, look, you can see the toe indents. You can see what looks to be a very large bipedal print, and you can see it moving along. And then I said, well, let me speculate right now that if it's walking along here, a lot of the eyewitnesses and a lot of the locals have told me that what it does is it looks for freshwater crabs. So we should hopefully see some evidence of that. Took 10 paces, and there was a large overturned boulder, and you could see it had been recently overturned because you could see the tide mark on the water. Mm-hmm. So say, for example, it's cut in half, and you could see the dry half and the wet half. Are you with me? So you could see that. And then I said, well, maybe it's been looking for freshwater crabs. And then Rudy, who's 5 paces in front of me, says, Adam, here's some crab debris. So everything I said that could happen as a sequence when I was speculating it actually happened live, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
So it looked really good, and it was very exciting. We were like, I had this, sometimes when I've talked to you before, when you have this buzz when you're on the trail of something. I had it a couple of times when I was in Sumatra on the Orang Pendek last time when I was with Dave, who saw it, and before when I found the prints. I really thought, shit, we might actually have something on the camera trap. We didn't, unfortunately, but we did have some very live evidence as it was walking through. And you're absolutely right to say, it was fresh. It had been there within the last 2 days.
Yeah, it must be exhilarating, too, because you never know.
Yeah, it was. It was so exciting. Yeah, it was. You get that heart-pounding feeling, and you think, it's been here, man. It's actually been here.
Yeah.
You can see that. And so, we bagged and tagged the crab debris. Maybe we can get some DNA off it. We've sent it off to Lars Thomas. It's a very slim chance, Tim. Very slim chance. But you've got to take those chances, haven't you? Maybe it's got a bit of saliva on there, and we might get something out of it. I think it's very slim, but I'll roll the dice on it, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Now, we haven't actually, and you sort of alluded to this just now, we haven't actually dug into the Mandy Barung and what it is and what people describe it as. So let's sort of bring people up to date on that so they have an idea what you were actually looking for.
Yeah, well, there were stories about the Mandy Barung being a large bipedal, as in walks on 2 legs creature. And there were consistent reports that it was covered in black hair, for want of a better picture, and Dippy, when I got there, seemed to say it was an opportunist feeder. What was interesting about it when we went there is, we confirmed the eyewitness reports, and I'll give you a sort of smorgasbord, for want of a better word, of some of the things that really strike me about the people that kind of I interviewed. The first one, I interviewed a couple of people who'd seen it, quite a considerable time ago. I mean, one man was an older guy who'd seen it sort of maybe 40, 50 years ago, and he described how he had walked through a bamboo forest and it charged them.
Oh, wow.
And he, for want of a better word, no scientific term, he basically shit himself and ran off into a cave, as you would if something 9 feet tall is chasing you.
Yeah.
And one of the guys described how it was an awesome, actually. It was an awesome bit of interview, because I spoke to this guy who was a really little guy. He was about 5'2" or 3,
mm-hmm.
And I said to him what happened, and he was telling me the story. And this is just snapshots of things, and because I'll build you to a picture in a minute. But I sort of said to him, he said, and I heard it call. I said, well, describe the call. Because I was trying to test him. I said, we talked about various animals that are native to the area, like gibbons and langurs. And I showed all these people pictures of indigenous species. And I said, was it this? Trying to scrutinize them. I spent a long time on his interviews. Again, these are only snapshots. And then suddenly, from out of this little tiny frame come this booming, ooh, I can't even do it, but it's like, it really knocked me off my feet. I was like, shit, where does that come from? This guy. And then there was this other guy who was, who described to me how he'd seen in the 60s an arm of one in a marketplace, and there'd been this big crowd because they have a lot of local markets there, and he described how he'd seen this huge black arm in the marketplace. It'd probably been snared or something and had broken off from the snare, and he described how it was black with fingers and fingernails, and it was massive, and it still sticks in his mind all these years later. He'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Now that was all great, but these are all old sightings. And then I came on to very recent sightings. I particularly interviewed this eyewitness who'd seen a mother and child, eating bamboo. And there's talk about eating fruit and bamboo. It seems to be an opportunist feeder, and they've been pulling bamboo shoots out.
And what's just to jump in? What's an opportunist feeder? What's that? Just like he'll eat whatever they can find?
Yeah, whatever they can find. They seem to specialize in fruit, bamboo, and things like that. And as I said, the crabs. But it'll snack as it moves through the jungle, for want of a better word. Okay. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
So whatever's around. But that was very recent. That's been in the last couple of years. Was encouraged by that. And then I spent some time with this guy called Nelberson, who was an eyewitness who'd seen it over several days.
Oh, wow.
And he described how he'd seen one build a nest, a ground-dwelling oval nest.
Oh, wow.
And he'd seen it and he'd come back to it on several days. And I'll tell you more about him in a minute. And we, I spent a lot of time with him, and we went down to the riverbed area near where he'd seen the Mandibarung. And I really gave him a massive grilling, asking him, checking out any inconsistencies in his stories, cross-referencing what he'd said and challenging him. But he was absolutely convinced that he'd seen it. This is a guy who spends loads of time in the jungle. Afterwards we relaxed, because I gave him quite a hard time, and I said, I respect you, but I need to be objective about this research and go through all this. And then he pulls out this massive bamboo pipe, and he says, no, now we're friends, yeah? This massive bamboo pipe is full of some, wicked local tobacco, yeah?
Oh, no.
He says, you've got to have a smoke with me of this stuff now. And he lights these coals are at the front of it, and I ended up, taking a massive lungful of this, and, practically throwing my guts out, but that cemented our friendship, do you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah. Oh, my God.
But in all seriousness, the eyewitness reports all seem to describe in synopsis a large black bipedal, when I say large, about 9 foot tall, footprints about 12, 13 inches, maybe larger. I need to measure them, because, as I say, I've only been back a few weeks, so I need to go through my photographs. Bipedal creature that builds ground-dwelling nests that can exhibit, interestingly, and this is something that seemed to be picked up before, aggressive behaviour. Gorillas can sometimes do mock charges when they're disturbed.
Yeah.
And it all pointed to me to the idea that, in my own view, it was something akin to a relic gigantopithecus. So, in other words, a creature that, as you know, lived in that area many thousands of years ago. Could it be some derivative or subspecies that still lives in very remote, largely untraversed jungle in that area? It's not sophisticated. It has no tool use, for example, and I don't think it has any fire. It would be very quickly discovered if it does. But it seemed more gorilla-like, only bipedal. That's the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, okay. All right. Given that how you described the locals there as kind of small, do you think that maybe the size of the thing could be exaggerated just because they're so small compared to the average, American, English, Western person?
I think that's a good point. I think when you see something that you've never seen before, that is shocking. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw a gorilla in the Congo. It was picking its nose from the top of the tree, watching me, as I pirogued across Lake Tele. And I remember thinking, "Oh, that's magnificent!" But your natural inclination is to exaggerate something that you see for the first time, and you do that with all eyewitnesses. But remember, I've spent 7 years of my life cross-examining eyewitnesses for a living. So I can, whilst you're right, I can take that into consideration. So yeah, if somebody says to me, well, it was 20 foot tall or whatever else, I'm not inclined to do that. Because, that's kind of, for me, that's kind of outside the realms of credibility. When they're describing that sort of creature, some people would disagree with me, but I'm only saying what I think as a field researcher in that area. But there does seem to be a consistent description that it's considerably larger than a European. And to your point, I'm about 6 foot tall.
Okay.
And when I spoke to the eyewitnesses and I asked them to describe how That's all it was. They consistently said much bigger than you, and put their hands maybe 2 or 3 feet above my head.
There you go. Okay.
So they were quite. I was quite specific on that point, and I was quite specific on the detail of it. Went through what it looked like, went through its facial expressions, how it moved, how it walked, what it ate, what it looked like. All these sort of details. Each interview would I'd be with these people for normally a couple of hours. Because I'd do an interview, then we'd walk around the area. Do you know what I mean? And
exactly.
Any odd question.
Yeah.
So I didn't just sort of say wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
Like bring him into a room and.
Yeah, bring him into a room, have a bit of a chat, cup of tea, and off you go. No, we were with them a while. I needed to get under their skin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, have them open up a little bit to you and trust you. You never know. It's kind of like
exactly,
become friends and they talk more.
Exactly. That's what Smoking the Pipe with Nelbison was all about. It's not because I wanted to have some gut wrenching. It was because I wanted him to feel that I wanted to listen to what he had to say. At the same time as asking him some quite difficult questions, I wanted to listen to him. And I'm conscious of the starting point. Sure, people who are skeptical about these things may say, "Well, you want to believe." And that's true. I wouldn't detract from that. But I also, on my time and my money, want to be as objective as I can. And I can tell you now, if I thought it was a load of crap, I'd be telling you, well, Tim, it was a load of crap,
Exactly,
bugger all. And I've said that before. As you know, I said it with Loch Ness. I don't believe the Loch Ness monster exists. I went there, didn't find any evidence, and I said so. So I've got a track record on it, and I don't believe fairies shoot around every corner. You know what I mean? If the evidence is there, I'll say so. If it's not, I won't.
I guess extrapolate a little bit on this. I think you said Nelberson cat, because I was interested. You said he saw this thing build a little shelter, if you will, for over the course of a few days. I guess talk more about his sighting, because that sounds he must have been really kind of hiding out there to watch this thing. Or how did it all come about?
Well, what happened was he lives in a village on the edge of Knockcraig National Park, and what he basically did was he went to he came across it by chance.
Yeah,
of course. He wandered off to a banana. He was going to get some banana leaves. But he went to a place on the edge of an old banana plantation, which is a considerable distance from his village. So it wasn't a place that villagers commonly went to.
Right.
Now, Nelbison is an unusual character in the sense that he's a great tracker and research. He's a man who spends a lot of time in the jungle. So to him, it wasn't a big trek, but to the villagers wouldn't have bothered going there normally. So it's remote. In other words. Mm-hmm. And when he was there, that was when he stumbled across one. He was on a ridge, and he saw one down below him. The Garra Hills are very hilly, but relatively speaking, small hills. It's not like the Himalayas, not big mountains. It's hills. And he saw it, and that was when he saw it. And he saw it. He watched it for a while, and then he was afraid. And he came back the next day, and it was still there, and it built this nest. Came back the next day, and it was moving off. Yeah, so he saw it move off into the distance. So, and it's the only time in his life when he's seen it, and he longs for the time to do it again. All the witnesses talk about one of the most overpowering things is because it's so large, people are very afraid when they see it. They're very afraid.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that you get is this sense of fear. So, he was, and he's a tough bloke. He was the hardest man I met in the Garra Hills. But he was afraid. I mean, the guy who described how he was eating the bamboo, he said, well, I didn't want to hang around for too long. I was frightened it would see me. It had a baby with me, and if it had seen me, I was frightened it would kill me.
Yeah. That was what I was going to ask you about this guy. Did he? I presume then that the creature didn't see him, obviously.
No, it didn't see him because he was at an angle of elevation.
Yeah.
So he's in the hill above it, and he's looking down on it, and he's obviously gone down, lying down on flat. So he's taking a risk.
Yeah.
But it's much harder for the creature to see him. It would physically have to look in his direction and the jungle to see him than it is for him to see it, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Because he was spotting it from the angle of elevation. Mm-hmm. He was the person who was up above, and you'll know that from anybody who's walking in the hills would say, well, it's much easier to see people down below than it is for them to see you. They have to look at you. Mm-hmm. So that was why he was able to observe it. And of course, when he went the second time, he knew or hoped he'd see it in exactly the same place, and he did.
Right, exactly. Based on what I'm hearing from you over the last few years, and based on the more I look into these bipedal primates, for lack of a better term, all these different creatures all around the world, it seems like maybe they're very migrational creatures, and that might be a big part of why it's so hard for people to get a handle on them or to ever, prove their existence, because they're always on the move, if you will.
That's
maybe
a very good point.
Some circuit of some kind.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. And one of the things, I'd like to do at some point is go into Bhutan, because Meghalaya, where I was, isn't far from the Bhutan area. As you know, in Bhutan, the king of Bhutan has a reserve for Yetis. Yeah, so there's a national park there, because the Bhutanese believe in it, and so they've preserved a vast area of jungle. And one of the things that could be possible through this is a speculative point, because I've not been there, and I don't normally speculate until I've been to a place. But because I've been nearby, I'm going to stick my neck out a bit. Could the Mandibarung be a population that, as you say, transits and migrates between Meghalaya through Assam into Bhutan? So could it go in a jungle or gone corridor and move around? I mean, these areas, as I say, of jungle are so vast and untraversed. I can't see any reason why it wouldn't. Yeah. It's easier for it to do so because it isn't confined to isolated pockets, or there's no reason why it should be. So yeah, I think it's very, very possible in that particular region that it does do that, and it does move around to a large degree. And of course, as you say, that makes it extremely difficult to spot. They're still going to be extremely rare, but it's encouraging by the same token, because if it's got a vast area to move around, then that makes its population more sustainable.
Like you said, extremely rare, so that means essentially like, you talked to some eyewitnesses, but it wasn't so prevalent that it was, you just talked to like anybody and they'd seen it kind of thing. No. I mean, when I go, obviously I'm concentrating my efforts in Sumatra, and I've been there so many times, but when I go to Sumatra, there's, Sahar, who's my forest guide, sends me regular reports of people who've seen the orang pendek, so it's more frequent down there for the...
Yeah, not a couple of months go by when someone hasn't seen one in that particular area where I go to. That's not the case in this part of India, but that's plausible and explained by the fact that it's just so vast, this jungle, and, it would only come to specific areas for food sources when it suited it. So that was why it was encouraging. I went, as I say to you, Tim, I went with the expectation that I was going to find a population in terminal decline, and that was my view even when I got to Tura, which is like the base camp on the edge of it, and it wasn't the case. Far from it. I'm pretty optimistic now. Yeah.
Based on what you brought back from the event, it seems like from the expedition. I mean, it seems like this is the kind of thing that if you had the resources and you had the time, that it could be quite, a vein of serious information and quite an area that would explode with information. I mean, this thing sounds like it's, I guess, more within reach almost, just because so few people have gone looking for it down there.
Yeah, there are a couple of specific areas now which I'd go, and if I had the time and money, I'd camera trap to death. Yeah. For want of a better word, I'd send teams in to 3 specific areas I've identified, and I would just be all over them. And exactly where they are now, I spent a lot of time travelling hundreds of kilometres around the Meghalaya area, identifying likely places. And whilst you can never say, oh yeah, it's foolish to say, if I went back right now, I'd bring back photos of it, because you set yourself up for a fall. But what I can say is, if I went back with a lot of resources, I'd be surprised if I didn't.
Yeah, or at least come out with some, even better.
Even more substantive evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Each time I go to Sumatra or revise it, I get better and I get more evidence. It'd probably be the same with India.
Yeah. Now, I believe like last year when we talked, we sort of walked a little bit through the actual expedition in the sense of, without getting into specific day by day, but, the trip was like 3 weeks long, so how long did it take you from when you left London to when you were actually on the expedition? I mean, it sounds like you probably had to do a lot of sort of hopping around as you got further and further away from So that's civilization, if you will, or maybe not, like you're saying.
No, not that much, because what I'd done was I planned what I'd done with Dipu, because when you're planning these expeditions, it's all about maximising your time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And what I didn't want to do, as much as possible, is spend time waiting around. Yeah,
right.
I don't mind sightseeing, and I had a day at the end where I had to wait for my flight, and I'll go see stuff. But it's not about that. I'm not on holiday. I'm on an expedition, and it's about maximising your time. So what I had was a daily itinerary, which I planned day by day, which would take in terrain, eyewitnesses, sampling of evidence, and as much as possible, I tried to make it very, very clear that I would maximise my time. So I flew into Delhi. The next day I'm out to Meghalaya. I had the jeeps already waiting for me at the airport of Guwahati to whisk me up there.
Oh, nice.
Met Dipu in Tour and my forest guides, and the next day I'm out, yeah, and then I'm in the jungle with my team. So we pick up our food supplies, and off we go. And there's no to use a Northern British expression, mucking around. That means wasting time.
Yeah.
We're out there and we're doing it.
Okay, nice. All right, yeah. But some of the other expeditions, you do run into that sort of thing, right? Don't you? Where you have to, stop at the village and then you go to the next sort of stage till you get in there.
Yeah, and I think to some degree it's a cultural thing. Again, it's a good question because, for example, in the Congo, it's very important that they have chefs with the local chiefs in each particular village you go to, and it's a custom that you wait to see them and have an audience with them. So I could be sitting around for a few hours in the baking heat before some guy had deigned to see me. Then he'd sign my paperwork, and then off I'd go. That's the way it is. I spent 4 hours waiting for Marcel Ignana while he got in the Congo while he got changed into his suit. Just like, So yeah, you're absolutely. It depends on the area, and it can depend on the local official in Mongolia. That guy who nicked me on the border post.
Yeah,
because he wanted to extort money from me. He made me wait a whole day while he arrested me. And when I busted his ass to that general and said, you can fuck off. I'm not giving you any money. But he let me go. So, but I had none of that. I had none of that shit in India. I did have to speak to local officials to get permission, but they were fine. They had no problem with what I was doing, and what I'd also done again was advanced planning. So I'd written my letters of permission, asking for permission before I went. They'd been sent off to the officials, and they granted it before I went. So I wasn't waiting 3 days for a letter because my letters had already gone.
That must be pretty amazing then, because then you must have been in there for about 3 weeks on the whole expedition, right? Is that about how long it lasted?
Yeah, roughly speaking, yeah. I mean, I can't remember on a day-to-day basis. Again, I'd have to go through my stuff, and it doesn't usually matter. But yeah, no, it was concentrated. There was no downtime. It's not what I wanted to do. I said to the team before I went, it's going to be hard. You're not going to have leisure days or days off where, you discover yourselves in the jungle. None of that sort of crap. There's going to be no swinging through vines. It's like down to business.
Right.
We did have one day when we went, because it was kind of compulsory, where we went to the Wangala Festival, which is the main festival of the Garo people. It's called the 100 Drums Festival. It was awesome, actually, and we were lucky that we were arranged to be VIP guests there, and the Chief Minister of Meghalaya at the ceremony gave me some of this rice wine, yeah.
Oh, nice.
and they all turn out, and eventually it becomes 100 drums because they start little teams of 10 from all the villages, and they have a competition as to who are the best drummers and dancers in the villages, and it's amazing to see.
Oh, yeah.
A fantastic festival, and the place was packed with thousands of people. So we kind of had a day off to do that, and we had to do that, A, because we wanted to, but B, because we had to show respect to the local people and their customs, and they wanted to be there, and we could not insist that we spent another day in the jungle. And also, it helps you to understand from an anthropological point of view their customs, and if you understand their customs and traditions, it makes it easier to be a researcher. So it's important as well, and I enjoyed it. It was a buzz. We had a dance with the drums. What more could you say?
Exactly. Yeah. That's like that's an experience and a show that very few people can say they've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it was a good laugh, and there was some. We met some French gibbon researchers, some young ladies there, so there were some other bonuses as well.
There you go. Nice. Just to go back to the whole 3 weeks aspect, just folks, think about that for a minute, because you go on a vacation. I've gone on vacations, and these are vacations that are like a week long, and by the time they're over, you're like, I've just had about enough of Southern California, and I'm ready.
I'd like to go to Southern California. I'm not going to have enough of it, but I'll understand what you're saying.
Try it for a couple of weeks. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Imagine after 3 weeks, you're just about ready to go home no matter where you are, I think. So that's pretty remarkable to tough it out that long. I think I'd go a little crazy.
I've been longer than that. Like I was a month in the jungle in the Congo, in the jungle, which is harder than India. And when the equation I could say was, say you slept rough for a month in your local woods, eating, I don't know, monkey and bugs and all that, you'd feel pretty shitty. But if it's a month in the Congo where you've got disease on top and people are trying to shoot you, then you're going to feel pretty knackered. And one of the weirdest things for me is then I go back to my day job.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like I remember coming back from there, let's talk about Christmas, because when I was there, I was in the Congo. I was stood across the Ubangi River. There was fighting. There was a civil war going on. And I was with some missionaries who were really nice people. And they asked me to take some letters home for their family, post them to the US. And they were American missionaries. Mm-hmm. And I was doing that. But me and the other two guys I was with were around this little Christmas tree that they got, one of these little artificial trees that they got from home. And we were singing Silent Night. And then in the background you could hear this gun, Holy Night. And then this artillery flare goes overhead, and it's like, wow. I'm thinking, shit, it's like apocalypse now. I was thinking, I just want to get that flight home for Christmas. So every time I hear Silent Night now, I always think of that. I always think of that when I was there. So yeah, there's been some pretty intense times. Yeah.
I guess what did you bring back aside from the eyewitness reports and everything else about the Mani Barung? What did you bring back from India that we could look forward to hearing about? Analyze, I guess you could say.
There are a couple of really significant things. Mm-hmm. Sure, we brought back. I mean, I've already touched on the eyewitnesses reports, and they're great. We brought back a couple of other things. Dipu found some hairs, which he said may be from the Mani Barung previously. I'm not so sure. They look quite different. The two of them look quite different that he gave us. Three of them he gave us. But we're going to get those analysed by Lars Thomas, who does scientific analysis from the University of Copenhagen. He's going to analyse those. We also brought back some bone samples, which again we speculate maybe or maybe not from Mani Barung. We're going to get all those analysed. I'm cautious about them, but you've got to analyse them, Tim, because if somebody says, well, they may be from the Mani Barung, you bag them, tag them, and send them off. Here's a field researcher. That's what you do. And you leave it to the scientists to analyse. That's really important. Of course, I have my own opinions on things, but at the end of the day, what matters is independent, objective, scientific evidence. That's the only way you're going to prove new species. That's the only way you're going to ultimately preserve the environment, which is what I'm about. Yeah, so that's all that. And that's on the Mani Barung. One thing that was really interesting, which was kind of a curveball, was this. We went to interview some of the academics because we wanted to understand the history of the Mani Barung. Yeah. And one of the guys we interviewed was a guy called Llewellyn Marek. Now, we went to his house, and his father had lots of hunting trophies of horns of various beasts. Mm-hmm. He'd no doubt got when he was hunting, antlers and things like that on the walls. Now, John McGowan, who was on the team, he's an expert, amongst other things, he's an expert on deer species. And we're sat there. I did an interview with Llewellyn for camera. And then John looks up and he goes, "Oh my God, what's that?" Yeah, and he suddenly goes like really excited, and he basically said, "Well, that to me looks like a completely new species of deer," and you could clearly see because if you had a muntjac deer next to it, and they'd originally said it was a monkey, but it was like this new species, this what looks to be a new species, was like its horns were like 3 times the size of the other one, and like John's trembling, you know, he's like, oh my God, yeah. So I think, you know, again we've taken a sample of the bone there for DNA analysis to Lars, but that could well be a new species of deer, which would be a nice curveball, you know. It would be something very significant. And that was exactly what happened in Vietnam when the new species of deer was found there. Researchers went in, this is my understanding anyway, researchers went to see a hunter, said, what's those antlers on the wall, and lo and behold, it was a new species. So if I had to, you know, if we're doing a mystic ball thing here, you know, Tim and Adam's mystic prophecy of what might happen on the expedition. But if you're asking me to say, well, what's the most likely thing, I'd say, yeah, we probably found a new species of deer. Not based on any, I can't say credit for it. It was John McGowan who saw it. Yeah, it's nice that it was on the expedition that I led, but it was his discovery. I'll make that clear. But I think that's very likely right now. Very likely, subject to tests.
Wow, that's amazing. Just and comical in a slight sort of way. Just like you went to find evidence of the Mandy Barung, but we ended up, you know, finding a whole new species of deer. It's like,
yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And John deserved it because as I said, the guys couldn't do enough for us. Yeah, but there were 7. Brits on the expedition. There were a couple of camera crew, and there were 5 of us. And I think of the 7 of us, 6 of us, for want of a better word, got the shits at some point. Yeah, and poor old John had suffered more than anyone. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
You know, a couple of his pairs of pants had gone south by that stage, and he was feeling particularly low. So it came a good time for John to cheer him up. He won't mind me saying that because we joked about it.
All right.
This shit is fucking crazy. I heard some growling and shit out in the yard, so my roommate and I, we go to check this shit out. I look up in the tree, and there's the fucking king of the jungle.
You're listening to Banal of America Audio.
Even though my anus was broken, I knew that the rest of our journey would be great success.
Now, you said, I think you said the BBC was filming this. Is this something that people are going to be able to see in the future?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, there was a camera crew there, so I hope they'll see it. I don't know whether it's going to be a standalone documentary. I think it's going to be part of a more generic one about cryptozoology in general. So I think it might feature other people, not just the people I was with on the expedition, but also other people who are involved in cryptozoology. For example, I don't know whether they'll use all of these people, but I know John Kirk was interviewed, and he's a sound bloke. I know Jan Sundberg was also interviewed, and I know that they interviewed those fools from Georgia, you know, those guys, the Bigfoot hoaxer guys.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But I think what they were doing was looking for a contrast of people who were serious about the stuff and idiots who are not. Yeah. So I don't mind them interviewing them. They were very clear about the context in which
exactly.
they would portray things, and you've got to do the yin and the yang, haven't you? So it may be part of a general one, but as I say, you know what it's like with these things. You don't have any editorial control. You go with these guys and you see what happens. So I have no responsibility for the final cut. I just hope the things that I felt were really significant will be there. But the film crew weren't there for John's discovery. So I think they might have been there for part of it. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm a bit vague about that. But you know, it was significant. I hope they were. I hope they do record that. But we'll see what happens. You know, we'll see what happens. But either way, we videoed it. The samples have gone off, and it'll be verified or not, as the case may be.
Well, you raise an interesting point that I never even considered. But you obviously you put the expedition together and everything. How does how do these guys end up coming along, the camera guys? And do you have any choice? Do you try to warn them? Like what's that relationship like? Because it seems like, you know, you guys are doing all this prep to go. What if they throw some Teamster in there? It's like 300 pounds, and he's, he's just supposed to be filming it. How's that whole thing work?
He's going to suffer if they throw some guy in like that. It depends. It depends. The answer is, when I've done the Monster Quest films, you know, they've paid for the expedition. They paid for us to go out there, and And, you know, the guys I've worked with have all been really good. Jared McGilliard, Jared Christie, and Karen Manaran. They were great. I had a really good time, and I'm still in touch with them. We're still friends. They don't normally send people who are puffing and panting. You know what I mean? They don't, because it's their film and their time. With these guys, I basically said to them, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go out there. This is the expedition. You know, we're pretty much financing it ourselves, so this is what we're going to do. I don't mind making time for you at the end of the day to talk about stuff, but if you're at the back of the trail, you're at the back of the trail. Yeah. If you miss shit, you miss it. I'm not gonna sit around waiting for you. It's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So in answer to your question, they put up or sod off.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And are you? I guess, you know, you say you're responsible for your team and everything. Do you feel a sense of responsibility for these guys, or is it like, do they have a boss that's sort of along the way?
I feel responsible for them. I mean,
obviously, yeah. I mean, you were like, oh, you know, fuck them. Who cares? Who cares if they get the shits? But I just mean,
they're cared for. You know, I was in a lot of contact with Tara, who did a lot of the production, and Morgan was the producer. But, you know, I made sure her wishes were catered for, and that she was comfortable with everything. Yeah, of course. That once they're on the team, they're on the team. And you know, and they are just as much part of the team as the rest of them. Yeah, they're looked after in the same way as I would anybody on the expedition. You know, they were. I mean, they were a little bit. One of the guys, Chris, got very ill at one stage.
Yeah.
And I was extremely worried about him. I mean, luckily he's pulled through and he's fine now. But I was very worried at one stage about how he'd cope, because he was really poorly. But he's a tough cookie and he pulled through, so all credit to him. But we had a few rough days with him. That was pretty intense. But those are the things, you know, as I've said before, to equate to it to people in America who can listen to the show. It's not like when you're at home, or even if you're in, say, North America looking for Sasquatch. If you break your ankle there, it's damn uncomfortable, and it's a very unpleasant journey back. Not to take anything away from it. If you break your ankle in some of these places I've been to, not necessarily in Dibba, in some of them, you know, I was conscious of the fact when I was going through the mangrove swamps in the Congo, if I break my ankle there, it could well be my death. Yeah. So without being dramatic, those sort of things become extremely important, and it's my constant worry. Yeah.
Not to sound like an ass, but how could you die from the broken ankle? Just
well, basically because it was extremely difficult terrain. It would be up to a week actually.
Oh, wow.
Back on a stretcher. Infections are high.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that's it. You're taking a massive risk. Yeah. So that's how. Yeah. So even a small thing can suddenly, in extreme environments, magnify in intensity.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's how they build. And so everything is very. I have a medical kit that I rattle around with, which weighs my bloody rucksack down enormously, and I've got bandages and all sorts of shit in there, and sutures and everything.
You just hope not to use it.
Yeah, I just really hope not to use it.
What are the odds of like diseases and stuff down there? I always worry about traveling internationally in these countries like this. You know, do you have to get a lot of shots and stuff? Or is it dangerous in that sense? You know, mosquitoes bite you, you're worried all of a sudden, or is it okay?
Yeah, I think I read in the local. One of the things I didn't realise was how prevalent malaria was in that particular part of India. Because when you go to see your doctors for travel advice, they'll look at India as in a generic area, and they'll say, well, the malaria there isn't, say, as intense as it would be in, say, the Tanzania or the Congo. You know, there are different malarial strains, without boring people. But then I read in the local newspaper that 66 people had died in malaria. So it's quite virulent there, yeah. So, of course, malaria tablets were the norm. I've had a pincushion approach to preventative disease. I've had all the inoculations known to man, but as you know, I still get ill. Yeah, you know how I got that tropical disease last time in coming back from Sumatra, and spent some time in an isolation ward in hospital. So that was jolly, looking at the walls. But it's just one of them things, isn't it? You know, if if you're worried about that stuff, you wouldn't do it. But you have to sort of accept that at some point you're going to get sick doing these things. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Because even just the transition from you're living in Manchester, like you said, it could took you about a day and a half or maybe a day or so to. Then you're in the jungle. I mean, that's got to put your body through some kind of shock too, in a way.
Oh, absolutely. You do come back, and I do come back from this thing, because you have the physical strains. You're making the film. You're doing the expedition. Obviously, I'm planning it, so I have all that. I love it, Tim. I love it. I can't say you know how much I love it.
Absolutely.
But I do come back knackered. Yeah, and I'm tapping away at my computer in my day job, and I'm thinking, shit.
Yeah.
But you do have to bite the bullet. And I have a rough couple of weeks when I come back when I'm a bit beaten up. So yeah, you do have that debilitating effect, and I'm glad it's as we're doing this interview tonight, it's Christmas week, and I'm looking forward to it's Tuesday today. It's Tuesday today, the 21st. On Thursday night, I'm off, and that's it. And I've got a bit of a break for Christmas, but it's been a struggle the last few weeks. But that's small recompense for what I do. I love it. As you know, if I could, if I had my dream, it would be to do this full time.
Absolutely, yeah.
If I could do it full time, make a series or something, I'd absolutely love it. And maybe that'll happen one day. But right now, I have to pay the bills and I have to finance these things myself. So I have to work. And
I hear you, brother.
and you have to work. And because of that, you work, you suffer, you work. But I wouldn't change any of what I do in a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly. Not to even compare what I do to what you do, but at the same time, it's sort of like when you're in this field, it's like you do have two jobs if you have a regular
totally.
job.
Well, I know how much effort you put into the stuff you do, and it must be like a second job.
Exactly,
it
yeah.
really must be. Because it is to me, and I'm sure, we do different things. We're on different sides of the field, but the stuff you do is just as important as the stuff I do because you bring it out there to people. And I know it's a damn slog in different ways. So I think we can empathise on different levels on that.
Absolutely, yeah. Is there anything else you think we should talk about with the Mandy Burung expedition? Because I still have some questions about Boeing Panda. I think we've covered a lot of it. So
yeah, I think we've covered a lot of it. I think we're at the stage now where we kind of wait and see what happens. Yeah. But the research is in, and we just got to see if anything really positive pulls out of it. But the snapshot is yes. There's credible stuff out there. Yes, there's untraversed jungle which could support it. And yes, I feel confident there's a sustainable population, and I would go back.
All right, there you go. And let's talk a little bit about the orang pendek, because this is sort of like, this is kind of like your white whale in a way. I mean, you've been really...
no.
You've been chasing the orang pendek for a while now, and I guess the DNA evidence came back not too long ago. So what's the word on that?
Yeah, I was pleased with that. I mean, the DNA came. Lars did the DNA analysis. Well, first of all, he examined the structure of the hair, and he basically said, well, it looks to me like it's an unknown primate. Yeah, that was the first step. And then the DNA analysis came in and said, well, it's something closer to human, but I'm still forced to conclude that there's an unknown primate living in the jungles of Sumatra, which is really significant for a scientist to have extracted DNA and say, yes, there's an unknown primate living in the jungles of Sumatra. I'm delighted with. The structural analysis confirmed the research that Dr. Hans Brunner did separately. Many years ago, we recall that I went with Andy Sanderson and Keith Townley to Sumatra, and he said, well, Hans Brunner stuck his neck out. He'd done the Digo baby case. He'd worked for the Australian police in murder cases, and he said, well, yeah, it's an unknown species. I'd had Chivers who analysed my prints and said, yes, they're an unknown primate. And now we've got the DNA. Now, there's a lot of speculation about what it is. Is it a new species of primate, which is what I think? Is it some subspecies of orang or something like that? People are speculating about what it is. And whatever it is, I have my own theories, but whatever it is, I think the thing that I would say is since I started looking at this thing over 10 years ago, I think it's moved. The debates seem to be, in my opinion, moving from whether it exists, which for me is now fanciful, frankly, to what it is. Yeah, which is great. Yeah, and the reason it's great for me, very simply put, Tim, is I have been, as you know, on a number of occasions to Sumatra. I have been 1 year driving for half an hour through a place which was virgin jungle forest. I've come back 18 months later, and that'd been a bloody palm oil plantation, and it was devastating. And so, you know, the more proof I get for the existence of the Orang Pendek, it's its best and only chance, in my opinion, of its survival. So the more I push towards its survival and people recognize its importance, and there's a lot of Indonesians who are with me on this, then the more hope I can have for it to be preserved. And to use the gorilla analogy again, there's a lot of really good work being done now, for example, in Rwanda and in the Congo, about the preservation of gorillas, because they recognise how important they are. You've got good, well-organised people who are stopping poaching and snares. They've not eradicated it, but they are. And I would hope that the best thing that could happen in my life is that my research, as a small part, not to take anything away from Debbie Martin and Jeremy Holden, who spent more time on it than I have, but my research goes in some way to contributing to the future preservation of that environment, which will in turn preserve the Orang Pendek. That's the best thing I could wish for. And there's nothing in the field of cryptozoology I feel more passionately about, because it upsets me when I think about it.
Yeah, because it's a race against time in a big way.
Totally a race against time. People have said, you hear some people lazily thinking, well, why don't they just leave it alone? Yeah, why don't they leave it alone, do its own thing? You cannot leave it alone. Yeah, simply, if you leave it alone, the next thing it will be gone. Full stop. Yeah. Yeah. And I do these, as you know, when I go on these things, I have a right laugh and I really enjoy it. And I wouldn't, some of the things we do, and it's a great ball. But I wouldn't change any of that for the world. But there is a fundamental, really important principle. All the expeditions that I organise, not just the science has integrity because it's done by independent researchers, but I only do them because I hope that some intrinsic usefulness and good will come out of them. If I thought I was screwing something up, I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the DNA evidence that came back this year, this was from the hair that was picked up last year, right?
Yeah, that's right. You remember me and Dave Archer were in the jungle, and when we were together, Dave saw the Orang Pendek. And on the other side of the lake where we went, I picked up a trail of the Orang Pendek. I was just ahead of one of the guides and picked up a trail. And I followed the trail and the prints. And on the tree, we found some hairs, which the forest rangers said could be possibly be from the Orang Pendek. They were certainly the footprints were leading up to the tree. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't a Sherlock Holmes moment where we speculated what could this be from. It was pretty obvious you needed to bag them. So that was what we did. And I was delighted when they came out. I've just it's great when you have a result like that. It really is.
Oh, absolutely.
And I said to the team, when discoveries of this nature first come out, there's often a lot of, was it really genuine, blah, blah, blah. I've not had too much of that, but people take a long time often to ruminate over these. But, my own belief is in 50 years' time, they'll still be talking about that. I think it's hugely, hugely significant, in my opinion.
And the question I was sort of leading to here was, okay, so then you got DNA evidence, or I guess you could say DNA results back from a different hair in the past, right? And what I'm going with this is, is there any way to compare the DNA evidence of those two hairs to come to any sort of conclusions in a way where it's like, oh, well, these hairs match and they're both still an unknown primate?
Well, it was the DNA. The first time DNA has ever been extracted was this year.
Oh, okay.
What has happened before is that Hans Brunner and Lars Thomas have both confirmed that the structural composition of the hairs are unique. Yeah. Okay. The first time DNA has ever been extracted, where a scientist has been able to confidently say it's from an unknown primate, was Lars Thomas this year. That's why it's so significant.
Yeah.
That's never happened before. Simple as that. So what you can't. people that are writing saying, well, you can't draw a definitive conclusion as to what it is, and I accept that. But what you can say is that it does exist.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And if it was some other creature, then you would be able to say what it was.
Yeah, exactly. You haven't got huge comparisons, but we know it's out there now, yeah? And I think people would have a hard time saying, well, I don't believe anything exists at all. They may say, well, it could be this, it could be that, but you can't deny its existence. And I think that's in my opinion, that's a big leap forward, and that's a significant leap, a very significant leap.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's it, like you said. A long time from now, people will still be talking about it. It's a historic.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've done this research for years, and before that, I did a degree in history, so I know a little bit about archive research. So, again, we're doing our Mystic Tim and Adam show, but in 50 years' time, when we're sat on our hoverboards chewing the fat about this shit, I think we'll still remember that as a poignant moment when I'm talking about this to you now.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, when we talked last year, you were pretty confident that if you went back to Sumatra at a certain time of year, under the right conditions, that you'd be able to. I don't want to put words in your mouth, so let's just say, you'd come back with some significant additional evidence, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'll go again, Tim. I'll go again. It's just like, oh, here we go again, Oh.
Yeah, last year you were sort of burned out, but now it's like I bet you're chomping on the bit a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I want to eat those chili fish heads 3 times a day all over again. I want to go on the Sumatran weight loss diet, a before and after thing. Look at me now. Yeah, I will go again because I have to. It's vocational. I want to do other things. I definitely want to do other things, and I'll talk about those if I may in a minute.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But yes, I'll go back. And what's encouraging, I've taken different people over the years, but the team I went with last time, they're all extremely enthusiastic about going back. They were excited by it, and because I've been a number of times, their excitement sort of inspires me a little. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
You feed it off other people, and when you see other people really enthusiastic, it encourages you along. I've got to the stage now where I don't really need any jungle guides. I could pretty much run the shit myself. I'll take them, of course, but I know the area that well. It's like going down to my local corner shop.
Yeah, exactly.
It is an amazing place, and I have to go back because there's still good work for me to do. Maybe I'll go back next year. We'll see how it goes.
And then, I guess, like let's say you're back there. What's the best case scenario to push this to the next level? Because obviously we've established last year, killing this thing would be a terrible idea. You'd end up probably, eating fish heads for the rest of your life in the Sumatran jail.
Would you visit me in prison, Tim? Give me something other than watery rice.
So where do you go, I guess, to take this to the next level? Obviously, filming it. Would you try and capture this thing? Is it even possible? Do you even have the supplies to do something like that? So, let's take you into a best case scenario situation here with the orang pendek.
The best case scenario for me personally, on a personal level, I want to see it. Yeah. Yeah. I was really pleased Dave saw it, but as I said to you, he saw it in his first hour. His first trip to Sumatra, yeah. And if we just cast your mind back, we went there. I knew specifically where I wanted to go. I knew the best location. I knew where to go first. Took him there first with me in Sahar and Donny. And he saw it. And, that was great. I was just like a few seconds behind him, so I didn't see it. And he tried to make me feel better by saying, well, I didn't see his face. And I was like, shit, man, you didn't see his face? I've been waiting years to see it, But I would like to see it personally. Aside from that, I think, I'd like to get it on camera trap. I would like to get some clear, high-res pictures on camera trap. I'd like to get more DNA, comparative evidence. I'm never going to shoot one. It's against my ethics. I don't care if it's doing a cabaret in front of me. I'm 2 feet in front of it, and I've got a loaded gun. I wouldn't shoot it. It's just not me, yeah?
Yeah.
I think it would be extremely difficult to trap a creature of that size and strength without physically harming it. You'd have to use snares, and what you'd end up doing is ripping off part of its limb, probably.
Yeah.
I don't have the resources to build some sort of high-tech gaming thing the same way you trap, say, tigers. Maybe that's something for somebody else. And it's a good sort of tangential point, for want of a better word. But the best thing I can hope for with the research and equipment and resources I've got is something on camera trap. It's still a massive long shot, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
It's a massive long shot, and you have to go to that area preparing to be disappointed, because the chances of getting something are always really slim. But for all the reasons I've said, I think it's a good thing that I'm doing. So if I go back and I don't get anything, then I have to take that on the chin. Most of the time I go, I don't get anything. I don't come back every time with loads of great successes. I'm fortunate and lucky that I've had a few very significant ones. But it's not something that I get all the time.
So what else do you have on the agenda for 2011? I'm sure you have sort of all these dream scenarios percolating. So is there anyone sort of starting to rise to the surface here?
Well, Sumatra's one. I mean, that's definite. Mm-hmm. I'm also thinking about, I'd love to go to Bhutan. If I had the money, I'd go to Bhutan. I definitely would. It's an expensive country to get to, Tim. So you never know whether you can properly afford it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if I could do it, I would. One of the things I've considered, and I'm considering more and more now, is going to look for Sasquatch. So if your listeners have any advice and support about that, then I'd be welcome. I'd accept it. I'd be welcome to listening to it, because that's something that I'm really interested now more and more in doing. So anybody any advice or help about that, then I'm ready to dip my toe into a very big pond in relation to Sasquatch. I really want to go and look for it sooner rather than later. So if there was a headline, it would be, yes, I'm going to Sumatra, hope to go to Bhutan, Selyords on the boil for the Selyord serpent, but I want to start turning my attention to America too.
Awesome. That might be the best news I've heard in a long time. I'm excited about this. That raises.
Yeah, I want to go. I mean, I know it's a large field with a number of very competent researchers, but I'd like to just start on it and see if I can make a tiny difference.
Yeah, and you bring a whole different style to it that really I think it would be refreshing.
Yeah, well, I hope so. But it's where to start.
That's the question I was just going to ask you. Where this country's so vast, and there's so many theoretical pockets, I guess you could say, of Bigfoot, but not too many hot spots, really. That
No, that's it. Well, I've spoken to. I mean, obviously, I'm in touch with some of the American researchers, but it's something that I need to sort of delve into. So that's why I'll make an open appeal on Binnell for any help.
There you go.
And any suggestions that people have. And, coming to America shortly, hopefully, Adam Davis.
I like the way you phrase that there at the end. All right, so that's sort of on the radar, sort of something that's growing. And like I said, sounds like a very difficult mission, I guess, to undertake in the sense that I couldn't even tell you where to go myself. It's like
no, absolutely,
you don't hear about these things going on really that much. And if there's a Bigfoot sighting, it's like here today and gone tomorrow, literally.
Yeah,
they may never show up again for weeks or whatever.
There are absolutely real concentrations of pockets. I mean, I know that in in the Oregon area, I know there are places there. I know there's a very active Texas Bigfoot. I know there's the Canada, and I know that there's obviously the California. So I know a little about it, but I'm at the stage right now, very openly, where I know a little. Yeah, mm-hmm. and the first thing that I have to do when I explore that is getting my feet on the ground, so I know a lot. Yeah. And it's going to take. I appreciate that would take years. But if I go over there and I get a feel of it, then that's a start. So I'd rather do that as soon as I can. It all depends, At this stage right now, I always have, after I finish an expedition, I always have about 3 or 4 ideas bubbling along, as you know.
Yeah.
And 1 or 2 of them come to fruition every year. So those are my ideas right now. Something might change to influence that. I don't know. But you know, of course, if I was doing it full time, I'd be in America tomorrow. But it is a place that has grown on me more over the last few years, because I sort of think, well, I've got a lot of experience now, and I might just be able to bring something a little bit different to the party.
Yeah, and I think your like I said about the refreshing style, I think your methodology of sort of the extended stay would be really beneficial, because most of the Bigfoot expeditions you hear about are weekend warriors. They're people who just go out for like 2 days or overnight. But if you're, let's say you spend 3 weeks on the hunt, that might be the significant extra piece of effort that we need.
Well, the embryonic idea I have right now, in the first instance, I'd just be exploring areas.
Yeah.
So I may well just say go to a particular place for a few days, then go to somewhere else in a different part of the US for a few days, to kind of pick which I had a feel for, had the most chance of me finding it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So survey the whole area of different potential locations.
First it'd be like a broad brush approach, and then on the second and third revisions I'd gradually concentrate into a particular area where I had a feel for. But I think in the first instance, like when I go to any country, some of the undeveloped areas, it's first time you're revising and you're revising and you're revising, and gradually you're paring it down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's moving it forward that way, and I'd have to do that in the first instance. But there is just so much information on the net about all of these things, and there are so many researchers. It's like, it's not like when I go to India. In contrast, and as we've talked about, there is very little research. And a lot of the areas are unexplored. It's a completely different field. So that kind of appeals to me in a way, and that's probably, while I'm thinking it through and chatting to you about it, as to one of the appeals of it, is the fact that it's a completely different challenge to what I'm used to. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's completely the reverse of everything I'm familiar with. So that's why it appeals in a number of ways, yeah. Yeah. And also, I reckon at the end of it, I could have a damn good party in America.
That's for sure. Absolutely. Well, you got to make your way over to the East Coast, so we can have a beer for sure, definitely. And check out Lauren Coleman's International Cryptozoology.
Yeah, I've got to go there.
Well.
I promised I'll go there. I've got to go see his museum. Yeah, I'd love to see his museum. I've heard it's great. I saw the photographs when you were there, that he put up on Crypto Mundo. I've got to go to his museum. Definitely got to do that. He's been a great help to me over the years. So
and I believe there's a copy of one of your orang pendek prints there. So
yeah, there is.
Yeah,
he's got one in his museum, which is great. So it'd be nice to see it. Obviously, I've got one for myself, but it's nice to see his photo, his print there. Yeah, no, definitely, I will make it over there if I go.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I think we've wrapped up the update for the year here. Fascinating stuff once again. I mean, I take my hat off to you. I put you over huge at the beginning, but I got to do it again. Like I said, you put your money where your mouth is, and you step up to the plate and make these expeditions happen. And this year was even more remarkable in a way, because the Mandy Burung is like this really enigmatic and mysterious creature that I had never even heard of till I started hearing about it from you. So it's like you've done a great service of putting this thing on the map and hopefully going a long way towards establishing this thing as the latest in the many different bipedal primates that may be running around on this planet. So, just remarkable stuff beyond the expedition, too. So an educational thing going on as well. So kudos to you, sir. An awesome job with the Sumatran orang pendek, the DNA evidence. I mean, you just keep piling. The hits keep on coming from Adam Davis.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it keeps on coming for a while. Well, I mean, I always have a good time on this show, and hopefully in 2011 there'll be plenty more adventures to tell you, Tim.
Absolutely. I'll extend the invitation right now. We're having you back next season for sure for an update on your extreme expeditions, because, I tend to live vicariously through you, Adam. I'll admit it.
That's good, Tim. Well, Tim, as I said, after Christmas, you've had all the cake, and so you've had Thanksgiving, so you can work that turkey off. Anytime you want to do that jogging, man, you get out there. You can be there. We can have some photographs of Adam and Tim in the jungle or on top of the mountain. It's down to you, man.
I'm going to be that guy that breaks his ankle. I can already tell. Oh,
You won't be. It'll be cool.
Well, once again, thanks for coming back on the show, Adam. It's always a pleasure. It really is. I have the best time talking to you, and like I said, I just love hearing about your adventures. So I wish you the best of luck in 2011, and can't wait to catch up again.
Yeah, me too, Tim. Thanks ever so much. It's been great.
That does it for this week's edition of BoA Audio Season 6. Big thanks, of course, to my good buddy Adam Davies for coming back on the show and for providing us with some seriously fresh information on the Mandy Barung, as well as the search for the Orang Pendek. You can find out more from Adam, of course, at his website, www.extreme-expeditions.com. Pretty simple, extreme-expeditions.com. Check it out. And if you want more from Adam Davies, be sure to pick up his book, Extreme Expeditions, from Anomalous Books. You can get it via Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or in ebook form for your Kindle, Nook, or iPad. You definitely want to read that book if you want to hear more information about Adam's adventures in various exotic locales, looking for a real amazing variety of mysterious cryptids. Can't put over Extreme Expeditions enough. Definitely worthwhile reading. Moving right along now, it's time for BoA Audio listener feedback, and we've got a couple of emails here as well as some other feedback I want to respond to, so we're going to dive right in. The first email comes from Dave in Tallahassee, Florida, and here's what he has to say. I subscribe to your BoA podcasts and enjoy them very much. I'm a relative youngster in ufology, part of the under-50s crowd, but have been reading, collecting, attending conferences, and studying the UFO subject for the past 20 years. In fact, I may have briefly met you at the bar at the first X conference in Washington, D.C., as there were very few younger people there. I also attended another X conference, but haven't been back, choosing instead to gather with friends every year at Lou Farish's Ozark, Arkansas conference instead. Anyway, I enjoyed your 2010 UFO Roundup episode, but found it strange that you didn't mention Wendell Stevens in your In Memoriam section. Wendell was a unique individual, and his passing was a sad loss for ufology. He published over 50 books on this topic, some amazing, some not. I have around 25 of them. And was a driven researcher, had one hell of a UFO photo archive, and an amazing collection of many thousands of UFO volumes. Wendell was a walking ufological encyclopedia. Though he took a lot of flack for the Billy Meyer case, another complex and interesting conversation entirely, his investigation reports on this case were important and well-researched documents. No one's read them, though everyone's got an opinion about the case. Sadly, same as it ever was in this business. I know of only a few others who have collections in the 1,000 to 4,000 book range. My 600 title collection pales in comparison to someone like Wendell's. Just thought I'd mention the omission. All the best, Dave in Tallahassee. Thank you for writing in, Dave. Much appreciated. Thank you for your kind words about the program, and more importantly, thank you for pointing out this big oversight on my part. I completely missed Wendell Stevens in our In Memorial section on the program. Just completely slipped by me. I did my best to really give a pretty thorough look at the past year in ufology, but it's very hard to find sort of a list of people we lost, and I just did not see Wendell Stevens anywhere when I was doing my research on 2010. So thank you for picking up the ball where I dropped it. Much appreciated. Personally, I'm not very familiar with Wendell Stevens and his work. I'd have to do a little bit of background check on that and look into his stuff. So I think you put him over pretty well here at the end of the show and sort of got across how critical he was to the world of UFO studies. No disrespect intended on my part, merely an oversight. Wendell Stevens, of course, will be missed by all of us in ufology. And thank you once again, Dave, for pointing it out and putting over Wendell Stevens' contributions to the world of UFO studies. Much appreciated. The next email comes from Graham in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and here's what he has to say. The Paula Harris interview on your site has been unavailable for a long time. When I click it, it goes to your web design host. For years. When I hear that interview, I will make a donation. Really enjoy BoA. Great job, my friend, Graham. Thank you for writing in, Graham. First of all, I'm a little put off, I guess you could say, by being held hostage here for the donation, but I'm happy to report for you, Graham, and for all the folks out there who have been waiting for the Paula Harris interview to be made available again, that it has been fixed. All of the download links are fixed, and anybody that wants to listen to the Paula Harris interview is now capable of doing so. So all the folks who've been emailing me over the last 6 months, because that's really how long the interview's been unavailable, not years, Graham, only 6 months, it is available to listen to now. So thank you for getting on my case about it, Graham. I appreciate it, even though I'm not really sure about the way you did it. So go out and download it, check it out, and for all the folks who haven't heard the interview before, you can kind of get a double dose of BoA audio here this week, because now you can hear our 2006 interview with Paula Harris from BoA Audio Season 2. So, Graham, I've held up my end of the bargain. The interview is now available. I'll keep my eye on the BoA donation inbox to see if you live up to your word, sir. And we're going to do something a little bit different here this time for our final part of BoA Audio listener feedback. I don't have any specific email or correspondence to mention, but I did want to sort of highlight what was a surprising amount of negative feedback to last week's edition of the program, the 2010 Ufology Year in Review with Nick Redfern and Greg Bishop. A lot of people were really, really disappointed with the episode and were really down on it, and I was kind of surprised by that because I enjoyed it so much and I enjoyed listening to it so much that when the episode got posted, all of a sudden this negative feedback started coming in, almost primarily on the BoA forum, from folks who just did not think it really lived up to the promise of what it could have been. I don't really know what to say. I guess I'm sorry that people didn't like it as much. I'm not afraid of negative feedback. I'm always interested in people's correspondence on how they felt about the episode, and as you can see from the fact that we're discussing it right now here at the end of the show, I don't run from this stuff. I'm more than happy to respond to it and discuss it with folks who may have differing opinions from me. Now, personally, I think it was a truly unique edition of the program in the sense that that was as real as it gets, folks. That was a real conversation between me and Greg and Nick, three good buddies, three guys who have spent a long time looking at the UFO mystery. And we kind of got similar feedback in a way to our episode featuring Jeff Ritzman and Jeremy Vaney last year, which a lot of people thought was too in-house. It was too inside baseball. And I have a feeling that it's almost the same sort of critique in a way. That episode and the year in review episode, these are the sort of conversations you'd hear if we were all sitting around having a beer. And I personally think that they provide a fascinating, unique perspective that you're really just not going to get in a lot of places. Yes, I'm sure Greg and Nick could have come on and been really bullish about ufology and been really bullish about where UFO studies stand, but then they wouldn't have been honest with you guys. Then they wouldn't have been telling the truth about their feelings on the subject. Yes, I suppose the conversation could have been seen as pessimistic, but as we tried to point out at the end of the show, I thought it was more realistic. This is really where we stand when it comes to unlocking the UFO enigma, and it's not good, folks. It's just not a good place right now. Hopefully someday we'll look back on that episode and see it as the point where really the frustration with the wheels spinning in UFO studies started to crystallize. That's my hope, and that's my opinion. I'm hoping that things change. The other guys want things to change. We all want things to get better in UFO studies, and they're working hard at it, as am I. But we wanted to give you an honest look at the way UFO studies has shaped up in the last year and where it looks to be going in 2011. BoA Audio always strives to give you the most honest look at the world of the esoteric, and the year in review, for better or for worse, and warts and all, was our look at the year in ufology. The surprising amount of negative feedback has certainly given me pause as to whether we should do another year in review for 2011, but we'll let the year unfold and see what happens, and see if it's something worthy of pursuing at the close of 2011. I still really enjoy the conversations with those guys. I still thought it was a fantastic conversation and one for the history books and one we'll look back on in the future, but I can totally see the point of view of the BoA audio listeners who felt that it was a little bit more of the same, too similar to the 2009 year in review, or just plain too depressing for an edition of BoA audio. So your correspondences have been heard, your feedback has been heard, and it's all been put into the memory banks here as we move forward into 2011. And while this may seem odd, I want to thank all the folks who did have the negative feedback to the episode, because I appreciate your honest response to the program. That is what we need here on the show. More people telling us what you really think, more constructive feedback on the program is always appreciated. So thanks to all the folks at the BoA forum who posted their thoughts on last week's edition of the program. And on that note, let's close up the mailbag once again here for BoA audio listener feedback. Big thanks to Dave in Tallahassee, as well as Graham in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, as well as all the great folks on the BoA forum. Before I give you the rundown on how to get in touch with me, I also want to give a big thanks to all the awesome folks on Facebook who have been wishing me well on my birthday. Yes, today is my birthday, folks, and a lot of cool friends on Facebook have been posting birthday wishes on my wall. So big thanks to all those guys. I really appreciate it. It is humbling to see so many people posting birthday wishes on my Facebook page. I'm just blown away. Woke up this morning and there were just dozens and dozens and dozens of posts to the Facebook wall from folks wishing me a happy birthday. Just humbling stuff. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for the birthday wishes. If you would like to be a part of future editions of BoA Audio Listener Feedback, there's a number of ways to get in touch with me. Allow me to roll through the list right now. First of all, you can go to BinnallofAmerica.com, BINNALL of America.com, and click the contact button, or just write to boaaudio@hotmail.com. And the third method is to join up at the official BoA forum, theUSofE.com, THEUSOFE.com. Lots of great folks on there talking about the paranormal and the world of pop culture as well. We call it BoA's Paranormal Playground. It is the US of E. And as noted, I'm on Facebook and Twitter. So if you're a part of those social networks, feel free to befriend me or follow me or poke me. It's all good, and I would love to be in correspondence with you via those various social networks. No matter how you get in touch with me, I read all correspondence. I've managed to have a few days of downtime this past week and really put a big dent in the unresponded to emails in my inbox. I think I've got maybe about 24 emails left to respond to, and some of those date all the way back to like early October. I mean, that's how seriously overstuffed my inbox gets, but we're very, very close, and I'm going to take the rest of this week to respond to those folks. So if you're still waiting for a response from me, be patient. There's a good chance you're going to get it in the next week or so. And as always, you don't need me to say it, but I will. All correspondences are read, and if your correspondence is international or particularly pithy, or raises a serious issue that needs to be discussed here at the end of the program, we will definitely feature it here on BoA Audio Listener Feedback. Up next, of course, it is the thanks portion of the program, where we tip our hat to the amazing and esteemed BoA staff. Leslie, Chiron, Regan Lee, Joe V, Tina Senna, Rochelle Hawks, Marla Pena, our contributing cartoonist Andy Carolin, and our webmaster Jeremy Boston. As you may recall from the last couple of episodes, we put the call out to new writers for BoA, and I'm very happy to report that we'll be debuting a number of new writers at the website over the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for some new voices at Binnall of America, thanks to the hardcore BoA audio listeners who heard our call for new writers for BoA. And I also want to do a plug here for the Wake Up Now UFO Paranormal Conference that's being spearheaded by our own Leslie Gunter. This event is going to be held the weekend of April 29th, 30th, and May 1st in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You can find out more information on it at wakeupnowconference.com, all one word, wakeupnowconference.com. We've also got a button for it at the BoA homepage. Fantastic lineup of speakers. I may try and make the trip out to Albuquerque myself to attend the Wake Up Now conference. Still got a couple months here to decide if I can make the trip. But whether I can make it or not, I want to highly encourage the BoA Audio listeners to check out the Wake Up Now conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico, April 29th, 30th, and May 1st. WakeUpNowConference.com. Check it out. And finally, for this segment, of course, is the tagline we say every time around. If you're only listening to BoA Audio and you're not reading the columns at Banal of America, then you're only getting half the story. BoA, make it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. Now is the time in the program where I take off my hat and pass it around the audience, requesting donations from the BoA Audio listeners to help us keep the program up and running. How can you do that? That's simple. There's two means to donate to BoA. You can go to the homepage, banalofamerica.com, and click the PayPal button. That's right on the left-hand side of the screen. And below the PayPal button at the BoA homepage is another button that has our snail mail address for folks who simply just do not trust the internet and want to do a mailed-in donation. Here is the snail mail address: Tim Binnall, Binnall, P.O. Box 232, Pinehurst, Pinehurst, Mass. 01866. And you can find that at the BoA homepage if you didn't get a chance to write it down just now. We try to make a point here at the end of the program every time we read the snail mail address on two big issues. First of all, if you're going to make a snail mail donation, please include your email address so I can shoot you a line and say thanks for your donation. And if you're going to make a check or money order donation, please make it payable to Tim Binnall and not Banal of America, because my bank is anal and they will not cash anything written out to Banal of America, only to Tim Binnall. So please be mindful of that if you're going to make a check or money order donation. We say it week in and week out, folks, but it bears repeating. No donation is too small, and all donations go towards Banal of America and BoA Audio to help keep the website and the audio series up and running, freely available, and commercial-free for all of our great readers and listeners the world over. Next week on the program, we have got a real barn burner of an episode for you folks. It is definitely one of the most requested guests ever on BoA Audio, and someone whose appearance is long overdue on BoA Audio. I'm talking about legendary ufologist Phil Imbrogno, who will finally arrive on BoA Audio to talk about his new book, Ultra-Terrestrial Contact. I can't give too much of a preview of this episode because I haven't sat down and edited it yet, but I can tell you that it sort of straddles the line between interview and jam session, and we cover a lot of stuff sort of dealing with the outliers of ufology, the weird cases that fall through the cracks of mainstream UFO studies. Phil Imbrogno really does an amazing job of researching these cases. So we'll talk about some of those cases, we'll talk about some channeling cases, and we'll talk about why it's important to look at these outlier cases, for they may hold the key to unlocking the UFO mystery. It's pretty compelling stuff, and I think we went close to 2 hours in the conversation. So it's definitely one folks are going to want to check out. Phil Imbrogno, long overdue to appear on BoA Audio, and it was really a thrill to get him on the program. And I have a feeling that it really will be the first of many, many appearances on BoA Audio for the legendary Phil Imbrogno. That's next week on BoA Audio. Hopefully we'll get it to you in about a week to 10 days, because we're just about back on track with getting these programs out to you in a timely fashion. And on that note, let's close the book on this installment of BoA Audio. Big thanks once again to Adam Davies. Check out the book Extreme Expeditions and the website extreme-expeditions.com. Thanks to Dave and Graham and the folks on the BoA forum for participating in this week's edition of Listener Feedback. And, of course, big thanks to all you great folks out there, the BoA Audio listeners. You guys humble me week in and week out with your support of the program. You guys are amazing. I say it all the time, you are the fuel that drives the machine, but I really and truly mean it. You make this job so much fun. You make it less a job and more a passion. And that's really thanks to all you guys and your support and your enthusiasm for what we do here on BoA Audio. And believe me, folks, that's a fact that's never lost on me. So thank you for your support, and thank you for making BoA Audio a part of your esoteric audio playlist. Until next time, this is Tim Binnall, thanking you for listening and signing off.